The recruitment station buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of young beings from across the galaxy waited in long lines. Maya Chen stood among them, her small human frame dwarfed by the towering Krillian warriors and the armored Vex soldiers surrounding her. At barely 5 feet tall with thin arms and legs, she looked more like a lost child than a potential recruit for the Galactic Empire's elite military academy. Next, barked Sergeant Vorthak, a massive reptilian creature whose scales gleamed under the harsh station lights. His yellow eyes scanned the crowd with obvious boredom until they landed on Maya. A low rumble that might have been laughter escaped his throat. Maya stepped forward, her worn boots clicking against the metal floor. She had traveled 3 months just to reach this recruitment station on the outer rim world of Nexus Prime. Her entire life savings had gone into the journey, and she carried nothing but a small backpack with her few belongings. "State your name and homeworld," Vorthak demanded, not bothering to look up from his datapad. "Maya Chen, from Earth," she replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. This time Vorthak did look up, his expression shifting from boredom to open mockery. "Earth, that backwater dirtball in the Sol system?" He turned to the other recruitment officers, all of whom began snickering. "Did you hear that? The little human wants to join the Imperial fleet." A Krillian officer, her 4 arms crossed over her massive chest, shook her head. "Humans are barely worth the metal it takes to make their dog tags. What makes you think you belong here, little girl?" Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she kept her chin up. "I scored perfect marks on all the preliminary exams. My tactical simulations placed me in the top 1% of all applicants galaxy-wide. Computer tests," Vorthak waved dismissively. "Any child can memorize textbook answers. The real question is whether you can survive actual combat training. Look at yourself, your skin and bones. I bet a strong wind could knock you over." The other recruits had begun to stare now, some pointing and whispering among themselves. Maya felt the weight of their judgment, but she had come too far to give up now. Her mother had always told her that humans were stronger than they appeared, that they possessed something special that other species often overlooked. "I may be small," Maya said, meeting Vorthak's gaze directly, "but size isn't everything. I'm here because I believe I can serve the Empire well." Vorthak's laugh was harsh and grating. "Serve the Empire? Child, you'd be lucky to survive the first week of basic training. Do you have any idea what we put recruits through? Combat exercises that would crush your fragile bones. Survival training in environments that would cook you alive or freeze you solid. Strategic warfare simulations where one mistake means death." "I understand the risks," Maya replied firmly. "Understanding and surviving are 2 different things," the Krillian officer interjected. She stood up, her massive frame casting a shadow over Maya. "I've trained thousands of recruits. I can spot the ones who won't make it from a mile away. You, little human, have casualty written all over you." Vorthak tapped his datapad, bringing up Maya's file. "It says here you have no family military record. No notable achievements, no special skills or abilities listed. You're just another dreamer from a species that barely qualifies as sentient." He paused, studying her application more closely. "What's your mother's name, girl?" "Why does that matter?" Maya asked, confused by the sudden question. "Standard background check. We need to verify you're not some spy or saboteur. Now answer the question." Maya hesitated for a moment. Her mother had always been secretive about her past, especially about her time before Maya was born. "Her name is Sarah Chen. She's a teacher on Earth." Vorthak entered the name into his system and waited for the results. His expression remained mocking until the data appeared on his screen. Suddenly his yellow eyes widened and his smug grin vanished completely. The datapad trembled slightly in his clawed hands. That's impossible," he whispered, his voice barely audible. The Krillian officer noticed his reaction and moved closer to look at the screen. When she saw what was displayed there, her 4 arms dropped to her sides and her mouth fell open. "By the 7 suns," she breathed. "It can't be. What's wrong?" Maya asked, growing alarmed by their sudden change in behavior. Vorthak looked up at her with a mixture of fear and awe. Your mother is Sarah Chen of the Ghost Division?" "I don't know what that means," Maya said honestly. She never talked about her military service. The recruitment station had grown quiet around them. Other officers were beginning to notice the commotion, and some were moving closer to see what was happening. Vorthak's hands were actually shaking now as he continued to stare at his datapad. "The Ghost Division," the Krillian officer said slowly, as if speaking to herself. was the most feared human unit in the rebellion. They say Sarah Chen single-handedly took down 3 Imperial dreadnoughts with nothing but a stolen fighter craft and a handful of explosives. That's just the beginning, Vorthak added, his voice full of nervous energy. The Battle of Crimson Nebula, the siege of Fortress Omega, the liberation of the Torvan system. She was there for all of it. They called her the Phantom because she could slip through our defenses like she was made of smoke. Maya felt her world spinning. Her mother, the quiet teacher who helped her with homework and made her breakfast every morning, had been a legendary warrior. There must be some mistake. My mother is just a school teacher. She's never even mentioned being in any war. The genetic markers don't lie, Vorthak said, his voice growing stronger as he seemed to recover from his initial shock. You are definitely her daughter. The question is, do you carry any of her abilities? The Krillian officer was studying Maya with new interest now, as if seeing her for the first time. The rebellion ended 20 years ago. Sarah Chen disappeared after the peace treaties were signed. Most of us assumed she was dead. She wanted a quiet life, Maya said, still trying to process this information. She wanted to leave the fighting behind. But she taught you, didn't she? Vorthak asked, leaning forward intently. Combat techniques? Strategy? Survival skills? Maya thought back to all the games her mother had played with her as a child. The puzzles that seemed like fun but always involved tactical thinking. The camping trips where they practiced moving silently through the woods. The self-defense classes disguised as dance lessons. She taught me things, Maya admitted slowly. But I thought they were just normal mother-daughter activities. Vorthak and the Krillian officer exchanged meaningful looks. The entire atmosphere of the recruitment station had changed. Where before Maya had been dismissed as a weakling, now she was the center of intense attention from every officer present. Well then, Vorthak said, his tone completely different from before. I think we need to have a much longer conversation about your application, Maya Chen. The private interrogation room felt cold and sterile, with walls made of reinforced titanium alloy and no windows. Maya sat across from Commander Thex, a high-ranking Vex officer whose cybernetic implants glowed softly in the dim light. His metallic face showed no emotion as he studied the file spread across the table between them. Tell me about your childhood training, Thex said, his voice carrying the electronic undertone common to all Vex. Every detail, every exercise your mother made you do. Maya shifted uncomfortably in her chair. The past hour had been filled with increasingly intense questions about her mother's identity and her own abilities. I already told Sergeant Vorthak everything. We played games. She taught me how to move quietly in the forest, how to solve puzzles quickly, basic self-defense. These were not games, Thex stated flatly. Your mother was conditioning you for warfare from an early age. The hide-and-seek you described involves advanced stealth techniques. The puzzle-solving matches tactical scenario training used by elite Imperial units. The self-defense includes killing techniques that are classified military secrets. The door slid open, and Vorthak entered carrying a tray of equipment. Behind him came the Krillian officer who had introduced herself as Captain Sektar. Both looked at Maya with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. The background check is complete, Vorthak announced, setting down what appeared to be testing equipment. Sarah Chen, also known as the Phantom, was responsible for the deaths of over 50,000 Imperial soldiers during the rebellion. She destroyed more Imperial assets than any other single individual in the war. Maya felt sick to her stomach. That can't be true. My mother would never hurt anyone. She can't even kill spiders. She always captures them and releases them outside. Captain Sektar's 4 eyes studied Maya intently. People change after war, she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. Many warriors choose peace when the fighting ends, but the skills remain, buried deep inside them, and sometimes those skills pass to their children. Commander Thex activated one of the devices on the table. A holographic display appeared, showing a 3-dimensional maze with various obstacles and challenges. We're going to test your abilities, Maya Chen. This is a standard tactical assessment used for special operations candidates. Most recruits require several attempts to complete it successfully. What if I refuse? Maya asked. Then you'll be rejected from the academy and sent home, Thex replied. However, given your heritage, refusing would also mark you as a potential security threat. You would be monitored for the rest of your life. Maya stared at the holographic maze. It looked impossibly complex with moving barriers, simulated enemy positions, and multiple objectives that seemed to require completion in a specific sequence. How long do I have? Standard time limit is 30 minutes, Vorthak said. Though most candidates need the full time and still fail. I'll do it, Maya decided. She had come too far to back down now, regardless of what she was learning about her mother's past. The hologram expanded to fill most of the room, creating an immersive environment around Maya. She found herself standing at the entrance to what appeared to be an enemy facility. Red laser grids crisscrossed the corridors ahead. Simulated guard patrols moved in predictable patterns, and various security measures blocked her path to the objectives. At first, Maya approached the challenge logically, trying to map out the patrol routes and timing the movements of the security systems. But as she progressed deeper into the simulation, something strange began to happen. Her movements became more fluid, more instinctive. She found herself anticipating threats before they appeared, slipping through gaps in security that seemed impossible to navigate. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Trust your instincts, Maya. Your body knows things your mind hasn't learned yet. Maya stopped thinking and started moving purely on intuition. She rolled under laser grids at precisely the right moment, pressed herself against walls just as guard patrols passed by, and solved complex security puzzles with solutions that seemed to come from nowhere. Her small size, which the recruiters had mocked, became an advantage as she squeezed through ventilation shafts and tight spaces that larger beings couldn't access. The watching officers exchanged glances as Maya's performance became increasingly impressive. She was moving through the simulation with a grace and efficiency that seemed impossible for someone with no formal training. How long has she been at it? Captain Sektar whispered. Vorthak checked his chronometer. 12 minutes. She's already completed 4 of the 7 objectives. Commander Thex leaned forward, his cybernetic eyes recording every detail of Maya's movements. Her technique is identical to classified footage we have of her mother during the war. The same flowing movement patterns, the same intuitive understanding of 3-dimensional space, the same ability to predict enemy behavior. Inside the simulation, Maya had reached the final objective, a heavily guarded command center that required her to neutralize multiple threats while extracting critical data. Most candidates attempted to fight their way through or find elaborate stealth routes. Instead, Maya did something unexpected. She walked directly into the center of the room, triggering every alarm and security measure simultaneously. But rather than being caught, she moved like liquid mercury between the converging threats, her body seeming to bend and flow around laser fire and grasping mechanical arms. In less than 2 minutes, she had completed the extraction and reached the exit point. The hologram shut down, leaving Maya standing in the center of the room, breathing hard but otherwise unharmed. The silence stretched for long moments as the 3 officers stared at her. 15 minutes and 37 seconds, Vorthak finally announced. That's a new Academy record. How did you know to trigger all the alarms at once? Commander Thex asked. That technique is classified above your clearance level. Maya wiped sweat from her forehead, still trying to understand what had just happened. I don't know. It just felt right. Like the chaos would create more opportunities than trying to avoid everything. Captain Sektar stepped closer. That's advanced tactical thinking. The kind that takes years to develop. Yet you've never had formal training? My mother always said that sometimes the best way through a problem is to make it bigger, not smaller, Maya replied. I guess I just applied that here. Commander Thex made several notes on his datapad. We need to contact High Command immediately. If the daughter of Sarah Chen is displaying this level of inherited ability, it changes everything about human recruitment protocols. What does that mean for me? Maya asked. It means, Vorthak said slowly, that you won't be going to the Standard Academy. Your scores and your heritage have qualified you for something much more significant. The door slid open again, and a figure in an ornate Imperial uniform entered. Maya recognized the insignia immediately. This was Admiral Korth, one of the highest-ranking officers in the entire Galactic Empire. His presence in a simple recruitment station was unprecedented. So, Admiral Korth said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding entire fleets. This is the daughter of the infamous Sarah Chen. I've been waiting 20 years to meet someone from her bloodline. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. The way he said waiting suggested this meeting was not a coincidence. You knew I would come here? Admiral Korth smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Your mother may have thought she could disappear into obscurity, but the Empire never stops watching its most dangerous enemies. We've been monitoring you your entire life, Maya Chen, waiting to see if you would inherit her unique talents. The room suddenly felt much smaller and more threatening. Maya realized she was no longer just a recruit trying to join the academy. She was something else entirely, but she wasn't sure what. Admiral Korth gestured for the other officers to leave the room. Once they were alone, he activated a privacy shield that hummed softly around them, blocking any potential surveillance. Maya's heart raced as she realized the gravity of her situation was far beyond what she had imagined. Do you know why the rebellion ended 20 years ago? Korth asked, settling into the chair across from her. Despite his high rank, he carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who had seen real combat. The peace treaties, Maya replied carefully. Both sides agreed to stop fighting. Korth laughed, but it was a bitter sound. That's the sanitized version they teach in schools. The truth is more complicated. The rebellion ended because your mother made a deal. What kind of deal? She agreed to disappear in exchange for the Empire's promise to leave Earth alone. No imperial occupation, no forced conscription, no exploitation of your planet's resources. Earth would remain independent and isolated, as long as Sarah Chen never took up arms against us again. Maya felt confused. That sounds like a good deal for humanity. It was, Korth admitted. Your mother was single-handedly holding off 3 entire Imperial battle fleets. We were losing the war because of one human woman and her impossible abilities. The deal saved millions of lives on both sides. Then why do you seem angry about it? Korth's expression darkened. Because we made that deal assuming Sarah Chen was unique. A genetic anomaly. A 1 in a trillion chance that would never occur again. We agreed to her terms because we believed her abilities would die with her. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. But if I have similar abilities, then the deal is void, Korth finished. If humans can produce more individuals like your mother, then Earth becomes too dangerous to leave alone. The Empire Security Council has already discussed this possibility extensively. Maya stood up abruptly, anger flaring inside her. So you've been watching me, waiting to see if I would become a threat? Planning to break a 20-year peace treaty because of what I might be able to do? It's not that simple, Korth said, raising a hand to calm her. There are factions within the Empire that want to invade Earth immediately, before more humans like you can be trained. Others believe we should honor the original agreement. I represent a third option, which is recruitment. If we can convince exceptional humans like yourself to join the Imperial forces willingly, then Earth remains safe, and the Empire gains valuable assets. It's a compromise that protects both sides. Maya began pacing the small room, her mind racing. And if I refuse? Korth's expression grew grim. Then you'll be seen as evidence that humans are too dangerous to leave uncontrolled. The war faction will use your abilities as justification for invasion. That's not fair, Maya protested. I never asked for any of this. I just wanted to serve and maybe see the galaxy. Fairness is a luxury that doesn't exist at this level of politics, Korth replied. But I want to offer you something better than just recruitment. I want to offer you the truth about what your mother really accomplished during the war. Despite her anger, Maya's curiosity won out. She stopped pacing and looked at him expectantly. Korth activated his personal datapad, projecting a series of classified files into the air between them. These are after-action reports from battles where your mother was involved. Not the propaganda versions, but the real military assessments. The first file showed a tactical breakdown of something called the Battle of Crimson Nebula. Maya watched in fascination as the holographic display recreated a massive space battle involving hundreds of ships. A single Imperial dreadnought had been trapped behind enemy lines, surrounded by rebel forces that outnumbered them 50-1. Your mother infiltrated the rebel command ship using nothing but a stolen maintenance pod, Korth explained. She disabled their communications, sabotaged their navigation systems, and then somehow convinced their own defense turrets to fire on their escort vessels. The rebel fleet destroyed itself in the confusion, and she escaped with detailed intelligence on their entire command structure. The next file showed an even more incredible feat. Maya watched her mother's lone fighter craft somehow slip through the shields of a massive fortress that was supposed to be impregnable. Sarah Chen had planted explosives in exactly the right locations to cause a chain reaction that destroyed the entire structure while she was still inside. How did she survive that? Maya whispered. We don't know, Korth admitted. Our analysts have studied the footage for 20 years and still can't explain it. She should have died a dozen times over. But somehow she anticipated every trap, avoided every failsafe, and escaped before the explosions reached her. Why are you showing me this? Korth shut down the display and leaned forward intently. Because I think your mother's abilities weren't just about combat. I think she could see patterns that others couldn't. Predict outcomes that seemed impossible to predict. And if you've inherited even a fraction of that capability, you could help us prevent a war that would devastate both our species. Maya felt overwhelmed by the weight of expectations being placed on her shoulders. What exactly are you asking me to do? Join my special operations unit, Korth said. Work with us to identify and recruit other exceptional humans before the war faction can use them as an excuse for invasion. Help us prove that cooperation is better than conquest. And if I succeed, Earth remains free, and humanity gets to develop at its own pace without imperial interference. Your mother's sacrifice will have meant something. And if I fail, Korth's expression was grave. Then we'll likely be at war within a year, and millions will die on both sides. Maya sank back into her chair, feeling the enormity of the decision before her. How do I know you're telling me the truth? How do I know this isn't just another way to control me? You don't, Korth admitted honestly. But consider the alternative. You could try to run back to Earth and pretend none of this happened, but the Empire knows about you now. If you don't help us prove that cooperation is possible, then invasion becomes inevitable. The room fell silent as Maya wrestled with her thoughts. Everything she had believed about her life had been shattered in the span of a few hours. Her quiet mother was a legendary warrior. Her peaceful homeworld was under constant threat. And now she was being asked to potentially sacrifice her own freedom to protect both. What about my mother? Maya asked finally. What happens to her if I agree to this? Sarah Chen made her choice 20 years ago, Korth replied. She chose peace over power, anonymity over glory. Whether you honor that choice or make a different one is up to you. Maya closed her eyes, trying to imagine what her mother would want her to do. All those years of disguised training, all those lessons about thinking strategically and trusting her instincts. Had her mother been preparing her for this moment? I need time to think, Maya said. Korth nodded. You have until tomorrow, but understand that once you leave this room, other forces will learn of your existence. Time is not on our side. As if on cue, an alarm began blaring throughout the station. Korth's communicator crackled to life with urgent messages in multiple alien languages. His face went pale as he listened to the reports. What's happening? Maya asked. Korth stood up, his expression grim. It seems the decision has been taken out of our hands. A rebel faction has just launched an attack on this station, and intelligence suggests they're specifically targeting you. But I thought the rebellion ended 20 years ago. The official rebellion did, Korth said, moving toward the door. But there are still groups out there who believe the war should have continued, and they've just learned that Sarah Chen has a daughter. The lights in the room flickered as explosions echoed through the station's corridors. Maya realized that her problems had just become much more immediate and dangerous. The station shuddered violently as another explosion rocked the outer hull. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the corridors as Admiral Korth led Maya through a maze of passages she hadn't known existed. Behind them, the sound of weapons fire and shouting voices grew steadily closer. Who are these rebels? Maya asked, struggling to keep up with Korth's rapid pace. Humans, Korth replied grimly. Former members of your mother's ghost division, who believe she betrayed the cause by making peace with the Empire. They call themselves the Covenant of Fire, and they've spent 20 years planning their revenge. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's failing life support systems. Revenge against who? Against your mother, against the Empire, and against anyone who represents the peace treaty they despise. In their eyes, you're either a symbol of betrayal or a weapon they can use to restart the war. They reached a junction where two corridors met, and Korth held up a hand for Maya to stop. He activated a small scanning device, checking for life signs ahead. His expression darkened as he read the results. There are at least 6 hostiles blocking our path to the escape pods, he said quietly, and they're using military-grade equipment. Can we go around them? not without backtracking through areas that are already compromised. Korth studied his scanner again. There's another route, but it goes through the station's maintenance sections. Tight spaces, poor lighting, and multiple hazards. I can handle tight spaces, Maya said, remembering her performance in the tactical simulation. Korth looked at her with obvious concern. This isn't a simulation, Maya. These people will kill you without hesitation if they get the chance. Are you prepared for real combat? Before Maya could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor behind them. Voices could be heard, speaking in hushed tones but getting closer. Korth made a quick decision and activated a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a maintenance shaft barely large enough for a person to crawl through. This leads to the reactor level, he whispered. From there, we can reach the emergency shuttle bay. I'll follow you, but if we get separated, head for docking bay 7. The authorization code is Phoenix 77 Alpha. Maya squeezed into the shaft, her small size once again proving advantageous. The metal was cold against her hands as she crawled forward, guided only by the faint emergency lighting that ran along the shaft's edges. Behind her, she could hear Korth's heavier breathing as he struggled to fit through the narrow space. They had been crawling for several minutes when Maya heard voices ahead of them. She froze, straining to listen to what was being said. She's definitely here somewhere, a woman's voice said. The scanner picked up her genetic signature before she disappeared. Chen's daughter better be worth all this trouble, a man replied. Half our people are dead and we still haven't found her. She's worth it, the woman insisted. With her abilities and our training, we can finish what Sarah Chen started. The Empire will fall, and humanity will take its rightful place as the dominant species. Maya felt sick as she realized these rebels wanted to use her as a weapon for genocide. She began moving forward more carefully, trying to locate the source of the voices. Through a ventilation grate, she could see into a storage room where 3 figures in black combat armor were studying holographic displays. One of them was clearly human, but the other 2 were alien species she didn't recognize. They all carried weapons that looked far more advanced than standard Imperial equipment. The thermal scanners show movement in Sector 7, the human woman said. They're heading for the shuttle bay. Then we intercept them there, one of the aliens replied. Remember, we need the girl alive. Everyone else is expendable. Maya's blood ran cold. They weren't just hunting her. They were planning to kill Korth and anyone else who got in their way. She looked back at the Admiral, who was still several feet behind her in the shaft, and made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of continuing toward the shuttle bay, Maya began working to remove the ventilation grate in front of her. If these rebels were going to ambush them at their destination, then she would have to deal with them here and now. What are you doing? Korth whispered urgently. Something my mother would do, Maya replied, remembering the tactical files she had seen earlier. Creating chaos to create opportunity. Before Korth could stop her, Maya dropped through the grate into the storage room. The 3 rebels spun around in surprise, raising their weapons, but Maya was already moving. Her body seemed to flow around their targeting systems, using the storage containers and equipment as cover while she closed the distance between them. The human woman fired first, her energy bolt scorching the wall where Maya had been a split second earlier, but Maya was no longer there. She had rolled under a supply rack and come up behind one of the alien rebels, her hands moving in the combat techniques her mother had disguised as dance lessons. The alien went down without making a sound, his weapon clattering across the floor. The second alien spun to track Maya's movement, but she was already airborne, using a storage container as a springboard to launch herself at the human woman. Impossible, the woman gasped as Maya's foot connected with her weapon, sending it flying across the room. You're just a child. I'm Sarah Chen's daughter, Maya replied, her voice carrying a confidence she didn't know she possessed. And you made a mistake coming after my friends. The remaining alien attempted to flank Maya, but she had already anticipated his movement. In the span of 3 seconds, she had disabled him using a pressure point technique that should have taken years to master. All 3 rebels lay unconscious on the floor, their weapons scattered and useless. Korth dropped through the grate behind her, landing heavily and staring at the scene in amazement. How did you... That was incredible. Maya looked down at her hands, which were trembling slightly from adrenaline. I don't know how I knew what to do. It was like my body remembered training I never had. Genetic memory, Korth said quietly. We theorized it might be possible, but we never had proof until now. Your mother's experiences, her muscle memory, her tactical instincts, somehow they've been passed down to you. The implications were staggering. Maya wasn't just inheriting her mother's potential, she was inheriting her actual skills and knowledge. But before she could process this revelation fully, alarms began blaring even louder than before. "What now?" Maya asked. Korth checked his communicator and his face went pale. "The rebels weren't just trying to capture you. They've planted explosives throughout the station. This whole place is going to be destroyed in less than 10 minutes. To cover their escape?" "No," Korth said grimly. "To make sure that if they can't have you, the Empire can't either. They're willing to kill everyone on this station, including themselves, to prevent you from working with us." Maya felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. All of these people were going to die because of what she represented. Because of abilities she never asked for and a heritage she never knew she had. "How many people are on this station?" she asked. "Nearly 3,000, including civilians and recruits." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of all the young beings like herself who had come here seeking a chance to serve something greater than themselves. They didn't deserve to die because of her existence. "Can the explosives be disarmed?" "Not in the time we have," Korth replied. "Our only option is evacuation, but the rebels have sabotaged most of the escape systems." Maya opened her eyes and Korth was surprised to see a new determination there. "Then we make our own option," she said, echoing words her mother had once spoken to her. "Show me where those explosives are planted." Korth's scanner displayed a three-dimensional map of the station with red dots marking the locations of 12 explosive devices. They were placed strategically throughout the structure's critical support points, areas designed to cause maximum damage when detonated simultaneously. "This is suicide," Korth said, studying the display. "Even if we could reach all 12 locations, disarming military-grade explosives requires specialized equipment and expertise we don't have." Maya stared at the holographic map, her mind working furiously. Something about the placement pattern seemed familiar, like a puzzle she had solved before. "These aren't random locations," she said slowly. "There's a sequence to them." "What do you mean?" "Look at the timing mechanisms." Maya pointed to the data scrolling beside each red dot. "They're not all set to explode at the same time. Device 1 detonates first, then Device 7, then Device 3. The explosions are designed to cascade in a specific order." Korth examined the data more closely. "You're right, but that doesn't help us stop them." "It does if we can disrupt the sequence," Maya said, her mother's voice echoing in her memory. "Sometimes the best way to stop a chain reaction is to break the chain, not stop the reaction. We don't need to disarm all 12 devices. We just need to prevent the cascade." "How?" Maya's finger traced a path on the holographic map. "Device 4 is positioned to trigger devices 9 and 11 when it explodes. But if we can move it just 20 meters, it won't be close enough to create the chain reaction. The other devices will explode individually instead of all at once. The station might survive individual explosions. The station will definitely not survive a cascade failure," Maya replied. "This gives us a chance." Korth looked at the route to Device 4 on his scanner. "It's in the reactor core section. Heavily shielded, multiple security checkpoints, and probably swarming with more rebels by now." "Then we go fast and quiet," Maya said, already moving toward the door. "How much time do we have?" 6 minutes and 43 seconds. They left the storage room and moved quickly through the station's corridors. Emergency lighting flickered overhead as power systems failed throughout the structure. The sound of distant explosions and weapons fire indicated that the rebel assault was continuing, even as their timed explosives counted down toward detonation. As they approached the reactor section, Maya held up a hand for Korth to stop. Her enhanced senses, inherited from her mother, were picking up subtle sounds that indicated danger ahead. "3 guards at the checkpoint," she whispered. "Heavy weapons. They're expecting us. We could try to find another route," Korth suggested. "No time," Maya replied. She was already studying the corridor layout, her tactical instincts calculating angles and timing. "Give me 30 seconds, then follow." Before Korth could object, Maya was moving. She approached the checkpoint from an unexpected angle, using maintenance panels and overhead conduits to stay out of sight. The guards were positioned to watch the main corridor, but they weren't looking up. Maya dropped silently behind the first guard, her hands moving with precision learned through genetic memory. He went down without making a sound. The second guard turned at the last moment. But Maya was already inside his reach, using his own weapon's weight against him. The third guard had time to raise an alarm, but Maya's thrown equipment belt struck his communicator and weapons simultaneously, leaving him defenseless and unable to call for help. "Clear," Maya called softly. Korth joined her at the checkpoint, shaking his head in amazement. "Your mother's files mentioned that she could take down entire squads single-handedly. I thought they were exaggerated." "So did I," Maya admitted, still surprised by her own capabilities. They reached the reactor core just as Maya's mental countdown hit 4 minutes remaining. The explosive device was exactly where the scanner had indicated, attached to a critical support beam that helped maintain the reactor's magnetic containment field. "There," Korth pointed to the device, "but it's behind 3 layers of radiation shielding. We'll need protective gear to get close enough to move it." Maya studied the setup, her enhanced pattern recognition working overtime. "The radiation is directional, focused downward toward the reactor core. If we approach from above, that's a 20-meter climb up a sheer wall with no safety equipment." Korth protested. "My mother once infiltrated a fortress by climbing up its exterior wall during a lightning storm," Maya said, remembering one of the files Korth had shown her. "This is just a training exercise in comparison." She began climbing before he could argue further. Her small size and inherited agility made the ascent possible, though every muscle in her body screamed with effort. The metal was cold and slippery, and the radiation from below made her skin tingle unpleasantly. 3 minutes remaining. Maya reached the level where the explosive device was attached. From this angle, she could see that it was more sophisticated than she had expected. The device wasn't just an explosive, it was a shaped charge designed to direct its blast in a specific direction. Moving it wouldn't be enough. She would need to redirect its aim. Her hands moved over the device, guided by knowledge she didn't remember acquiring. Her mother's expertise with explosives, passed down through genetic memory, told her exactly which components could be safely adjusted and which would trigger immediate detonation. 2 minutes remaining. "Maya," Korth called from below. "Whatever you're going to do, do it now." Maya made the final adjustments to the shaped charge, redirecting its blast toward an empty section of the station's hull instead of the critical support structure. It would still explode, but the damage would be manageable rather than catastrophic. 1 minute remaining. She began her descent, moving as quickly as she dared, but halfway down her hand slipped on the metal surface. She fell the remaining 10 meters, landing hard on the deck plating next to Korth. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently. "I'll live," Maya gasped, though her left arm felt like it might be sprained. Did the modification work? Their answer came 30 seconds later when the first explosion shook the station. Instead of the catastrophic failure they had expected, there was only a localized blast that damaged some outer hull plating. The chain reaction had been broken, but their relief was short-lived. Over the next several minutes, the remaining 11 devices detonated individually throughout the station. While none caused catastrophic damage alone, the cumulative effect was devastating. Entire sections lost power and atmosphere. Corridors collapsed and emergency systems failed one by one. "The station is still going to be destroyed," Korth said, monitoring the damage reports on his communicator. "Just more slowly than the rebels planned. How long do we have?" "Maybe 20 minutes before complete structural failure. The evacuation shuttles can't handle 3,000 people in that time frame." Maya looked around the damaged reactor room, her mind racing. What if we don't evacuate everyone? What if we save the station instead? That's impossible. The damage is too extensive. Not if we redirect the reactor's output to the emergency stabilization systems, Maya said, the solution forming in her mind like a complex tactical scenario. Overload the magnetic field generators to create a temporary structural support network. Korth stared at her. That's actually theoretically possible, but it would require someone to manually regulate the reactor output from inside the core chamber. The radiation exposure would be fatal within minutes. Not necessarily, Maya said quietly. Not if that someone had the right genetic advantages. The implication hung between them. Maya was suggesting that she sacrifice herself to save the station and everyone on it. It was exactly the kind of impossible heroic gesture that her mother had become famous for during the war. "I won't let you do that," Korth said firmly. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Maya replied, moving toward the reactor core controls. "And you know it. This is what my mother would do." Your mother chose peace over martyrdom, Korth reminded her. She chose to live and build a better future rather than die for a glorious cause. Maya paused, her hand on the reactor control panel. She chose what was right for her time. This is what's right for mine. The station shuddered again as another section failed. Time was running out and Maya had to make the most important decision of her life. Maya's hand hovered over the reactor controls as another structural failure sent vibrations through the deck plating. She could feel the weight of 3,000 lives depending on her decision. But something was holding her back. Deep in her inherited memories, she sensed that her mother would have found another way. Wait, she said suddenly, stepping back from the controls. My mother didn't become a legend by making heroic sacrifices. She became a legend by finding solutions that nobody else could see. Korth looked confused. Maya, we're running out of time. If you're not going to do this, then we need to start evacuating people now. Give me a minute to think, Maya said, closing her eyes and letting her inherited tactical instincts work through the problem. The station was failing because multiple systems had been damaged simultaneously. But what if, instead of trying to save everything, they focused on saving the most critical elements? The docking bays, she said suddenly. How many are still functional? Korth checked his scanner. 6 out of 12. But that's not enough capacity for everyone. What if we don't use them as docking bays? Maya asked, her mind racing through possibilities. What if we use them as temporary habitat modules? I don't understand. Maya moved to a wall display and began calling up the station's structural schematics. Look at the design. The docking bays are the most heavily reinforced sections of the station. They have independent life support, their own power generators and emergency supplies. If we could seal them off from the rest of the station, they could survive even if the main structure collapsed. Korth finished, understanding dawning in his voice. But how do we get 3,000 people into 6 docking bays before the station fails? We don't move the people to the bays, Maya said, her fingers flying over the control interface. We move the bays to the people. Korth stared at her as if she had gone insane. Maya, docking bays don't move. They're part of the station's structure. Not if we detach them, Maya replied, bringing up the emergency separation protocols that were built into every major space station. Each docking bay has explosive bolts that can separate it from the main structure in case of catastrophic damage. We trigger those bolts, use the station's tractor beam array to guide the separated bays to different sections, and load people directly through the hull breaches. That's... Korth paused, running calculations in his head. That's actually brilliant. Insane but brilliant. Though it would require someone to manually coordinate the separation sequence from the station's command center, which is in the section that's most likely to collapse first, Maya noted. Exactly. Whoever volunteers for that job probably won't survive the experience. Maya was already moving toward the door. Then we better get started. They raced through the damaged corridors toward the command center, passing groups of panicked civilians and Imperial personnel who were trying to reach the failing evacuation points. Maya's enhanced abilities allowed her to navigate the debris and damaged sections that would have stopped most people. When they reached the command center, they found it in chaos. The senior officers were trying to coordinate a traditional evacuation while dealing with continuing rebel attacks and system failures. Maya pushed through the crowd to the central control station. I need access to the emergency separation protocols, she announced. Commander Vex 7, the station's cybernetic operations officer, looked at her with disbelief. You're just a recruit. These systems require clearance levels you don't possess. She has the clearance, Admiral Korth said, arriving behind Maya. By my authority as fleet commander, grant her full access to all station systems. Sir, the liability is mine, Korth finished. Do it now. Vex 7 reluctantly activated the emergency protocols, and Maya immediately began working with systems she had never seen before but somehow understood perfectly. Her mother's memories guided her hands as she initiated the complex sequence required to safely detach the docking bays. Attention all personnel, Maya's voice echoed through the station's communication system. Emergency evacuation protocols are now in effect. Report to the nearest docking bay area for immediate departure. This is not a drill. The first separation explosive fired with a tremendous bang that shook the entire station. Through the external cameras, Maya watched as Docking Bay 1 slowly detached from the main structure, its independent thrusters keeping it stable in space. Incredible, Vex 7 muttered, I've never seen anyone coordinate multiple tractor beam arrays while simultaneously managing separation sequences. How are you doing this? Practice, Maya replied, though she knew it was really her mother's expertise flowing through her genetic memories. Bay 2, prepare for separation. One by one, the docking bays separated from the dying station. Maya used the tractor beam arrays to position them near hull breaches and damaged sections where people were trapped. The separated bays became rescue vessels, collecting survivors directly from the station's failing structure. Bay 6 separation complete, Maya announced. All bays are now autonomous and collecting passengers. Remarkable, Admiral Korth said, watching the rescue operation unfold on the main display. You've saved nearly everyone on the station. Not everyone, Maya said quietly. The command center crew is still here and we're in the section most likely to collapse first. As if summoned by her words, a series of alarms began blaring throughout the command center. The main structural supports were finally failing, and the entire section would collapse within minutes. All remaining personnel, emergency evacuation to the nearest airlock, Vex 7 commanded. Abandon the command center immediately. The crew began filing out rapidly, but Maya remained at the control station. Someone needs to coordinate the final phase, she said. Make sure all the bays reach minimum safe distance before the station's reactor goes critical. Maya, that's not necessary, Korth said. The automated systems can handle the final coordination. The automated systems were damaged in the rebel attack, Maya replied, showing him the error messages scrolling across her display. Manual control is the only option. Korth realized what she was telling him. Someone had to stay behind to complete the rescue operation, and that someone would not survive the station's final collapse. I'll do it, he said firmly. This is my responsibility as the senior officer. No, Maya said, her voice carrying a new authority. This is my choice as Sarah Chen's daughter. Before Korth could argue further, Maya activated the command center's emergency lockdown. Blast doors sealed automatically, trapping her inside the control room while everyone else was forced to evacuate. Maya, Korth shouted through the reinforced door. Don't do this. Your mother chose to live. My mother chose to protect people, Maya replied, her voice coming through the communication system. Today, that's my choice too. Through the external cameras, Maya watched the separated docking bays moving away from the station, each one carrying hundreds of survivors to safety. Her enhanced abilities allowed her to coordinate their movements with precision, ensuring that everyone would reach minimum safe distance before the final collapse. All bays are now at safe distance, she announced. Mission accomplished. The station shuddered violently as the main reactor finally began to fail. Maya had perhaps 30 seconds before the entire structure would be consumed in nuclear fire. But as she prepared to accept her fate, something unexpected happened. A new ship appeared on her sensors, moving impossibly fast toward the failing station. It was sleek and advanced, unlike any Imperial or Rebel vessel she had ever seen, and it was broadcasting a single message on all frequencies. This is Sarah Chen. I'm coming for my daughter. Maya stared at the sensor display in disbelief as the unknown ship rapidly approached the collapsing station. The vessel was moving at velocities that should have been impossible, executing maneuvers that defied every principle of physics she knew. Even more impossibly, it was heading directly toward the station's reactor core, which was seconds away from critical failure. Mom? Maya whispered, her voice barely audible over the alarms blaring throughout the command center. The ship's communication system crackled to life, and Sarah Chen's voice filled the room with calm authority. Maya, honey, I need you to listen very carefully. When I tell you to, activate the emergency transport pad behind you. You'll have exactly 2.3 seconds to reach it before the reactor goes critical. There is no transport pad behind me, Maya said, spinning around to look at the bare wall. Yes, there is. Your enhanced senses just haven't noticed it yet. Focus, Maya. Use what I taught you about seeing beyond the obvious. Maya took a deep breath and let her inherited abilities expand her perception. Suddenly, she could see the faint outline of a hidden panel in the wall, camouflaged so perfectly that it appeared to be part of the station's normal structure. Her fingers found the activation sequence without conscious thought, revealing an emergency transport system she hadn't known existed. How did you know about that? Maya asked. Because I installed it 20 years ago, Sarah replied, her ship now impossibly close to the station. I've been monitoring Imperial installations throughout the galaxy. setting up contingencies for exactly this situation. Now get ready. Through the external cameras, Maya watched her mother's ship perform what could only be described as an impossible feat. Instead of attempting a conventional docking, the vessel somehow phased through the station's hull as if it were made of light. Maya's enhanced senses detected energy patterns that shouldn't exist, technologies that seemed to bend the laws of reality itself. Now Maya. Transport pad now. Maya dove toward the hidden transport system, just as the station's reactor finally reached critical mass. The last thing she saw through the cameras was her mother's ship emerging from the other side of the station, carrying both her and the command center's entire structure, somehow suspended in an energy field that sparkled with impossible colors. When the transport beam released her, Maya found herself standing in the cargo bay of her mother's ship, still holding the portable control unit she had been using to coordinate the rescue operation. The bay was filled with technology she didn't recognize, and standing before her was a woman who looked exactly like her mother but somehow seemed larger than life. "Hello, sweetheart," Sarah Chen said, pulling Maya into a tight embrace. "I'm sorry I'm late. Mom, how did you— What is this ship? How did you get here so fast?" Maya's questions tumbled out in a confused rush. "It's a long story," Sarah replied, leading Maya toward what appeared to be the ship's bridge. "The short version is that the peace treaty I negotiated 20 years ago included certain classified provisions. I agreed to disappear, but I also insisted on maintaining the ability to protect Earth if the situation ever changed." They entered the bridge, and Maya gasped at what she saw. The entire space was filled with holographic displays showing every Imperial fleet movement, rebel activity, and political development across the galaxy. It was a monitoring system that would have been impressive for an entire intelligence agency, let alone a single person. "You've been watching everything," Maya said in amazement. "I've been protecting everything," Sarah corrected. "Earth, the peace treaty, and most importantly, you. I knew this day would come eventually. The Empire was never going to ignore your existence forever. But the rebels, the attack on the station, all those people who almost died, were part of a much larger plan," Sarah interrupted, activating one of the displays. "The Covenant of Fire wasn't acting independently. They were being manipulated by a faction within the Imperial hierarchy that wanted to create a crisis." The display showed communication intercepts and financial records that painted a disturbing picture. High-ranking Imperial officers had been secretly funding and directing the rebel attacks, using them to justify breaking the peace treaty and invading Earth. "Admiral Korth was trying to prevent this," Maya said, understanding dawning in her voice. "Admiral Korth was doing his best within a corrupt system," Sarah agreed. "But he didn't have all the information. The war faction has been planning this for years, waiting for the right excuse to move against Earth. So what happens now?" Maya asked. Sarah's expression grew serious. "Now we give them a demonstration of why the original peace treaty was in their best interests." She activated the ship's external cameras, showing Maya the tactical situation around the destroyed station. The separated docking bays were safely distant, but they were surrounded by Imperial warships that had arrived ostensibly to provide rescue assistance. However, the warships' weapons were powered and targeting systems were active. "They're planning to capture the survivors," Sarah explained. "Use them as hostages to force Earth's surrender. The war faction wants to claim that human extremists destroyed an Imperial station, making invasion a matter of self-defense. Can we stop them?" "We can," Sarah said, moving to the ship's control systems. "But it means revealing capabilities that I've kept hidden for 20 years. Once the Empire sees what humans are really capable of, there's no going back to the quiet life." Maya watched her mother's hands move over controls that seemed to respond to thought as much as touch. The ship's systems came alive with power that felt almost magical in its sophistication. Through the displays, she could see energy readings that were off the scale of anything she had learned about in her engineering classes. "Mom, what exactly are you?" Sarah smiled, but there was sadness in her expression. "I'm what humans become when they stop limiting themselves by what other species think is possible. During the war, I didn't just fight the Empire. I learned from them. I studied their technology, their strategies, their weaknesses, and I discovered that humans have potential that even we don't fully understand." The ship moved toward the Imperial fleet with impossible speed and grace. Warning signals began broadcasting from the warships, demanding identification and surrender. Sarah ignored them completely. "Attention Imperial vessels. Sarah's voice echoed across all communication frequencies. You are threatening civilian refugees under the protection of the Chen Accord. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Chen Accord? Maya asked. A classified addendum to the peace treaty, Sarah explained. It grants me authority to defend human interests anywhere in the galaxy if the original agreement is violated. The Imperial Fleet Commander responded with typical arrogance. Unknown vessel, you are interfering with official Imperial business. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Wrong answer, Sarah said quietly. What happened next defied everything Maya thought she knew about space combat. Her mother's ship didn't attack the Imperial fleet in any conventional sense. Instead, it seemed to dance between the warships, somehow disrupting their systems with energy pulses that left them helpless but undamaged. Within minutes, 8 of the galaxy's most advanced warships were floating dead in space, their crews unharmed but their vessels completely disabled. How did you do that? Maya whispered. I learned to think beyond the conventional, Sarah replied. The Empire builds weapons designed to destroy things. I built technology designed to solve problems. The rescued civilians from the station were now free to return safely to their home worlds. The Imperial War faction's plan had been exposed and thwarted, and Maya finally understood what her mother had tried to teach her all those years, that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to find better solutions. What happens now? Maya asked as they watched the disabled Imperial fleet being rescued by other vessels. Now you have a choice, Sarah said, turning to face her daughter. You can come home with me and live the quiet life I originally chose. Or you can take Admiral Korth's offer and work within the system to build a better future for both humans and the Empire. Maya looked at the displays showing the aftermath of the day's events. Thousands of lives had been saved, a war had been prevented, and the galaxy had been given a demonstration of what humans could accomplish when they chose cooperation over conflict. I think, Maya said slowly, I'd like to try Admiral Korth's approach. Work within the system, but with the knowledge of what's really possible when we stop limiting ourselves. Sarah smiled with genuine pride. That sounds exactly like something your mother would choose. As they headed toward the rendezvous point where Admiral Korth was waiting with the rescued station personnel, Maya realized that her journey was just beginning. She was no longer just the daughter of a legend. She was ready to become a legend herself, but on her own terms. The Galactic Empire had indeed deemed her a weak child, but they had learned the truth that her mother's name represented. Humans were far more than they appeared to be, and underestimating them was the Empire's greatest mistake.